Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought in a video today we would talk about some German vehicles I would love to see as event vehicles in the future, which either mirror other nations' event vehicles, or just are really interesting ones that I don't think fit in the tech trees too well, or have equivalents that could also go in the tech trees. So we're going to go through a few of them, and as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and also like the video. Let's get started. The first vehicle is a Leopard 2. For Turkey, the Leopard 2A4 T1. Now, there's an article from the suggestions from Linktree, which actually goes through the Leopard 2A4 T1 very well. There wasn't a ton of stuff upgraded on it, apart from its armor. So it kept the 120mm L44, it also kept the same good old engine, and also the same transmission. The only thing that affected it is it had a slight bit of additional weight because of the armor package. And what is this armor package? Well, it's the Roketsan T1 armor package. What this does is add a bunch of passive armor on the turret and also on the hull, and with some reactive armor on the sides of the hull to keep it going. It even had a bunch of cage armor on the back of it, and the main idea of this armor was to deal with chemical munitions, so stuff like RPGs, ATGMs, and also heat rounds. The ERA as well on the side did stop the PG-7VR, which is a tandem RPG with 600mm behind the ERA protection. So overall, what you're getting is kind of a beefy Leopard 2, very similar to the C2A1, which they have added to the game already. But this would be some Turkish representation. The next vehicle is the Leopard 2-140. Now, the interesting thing about the Leopard 2-140 is there's technically two of them which were prototyped. You have the German one, which used the 140mm Rheinmetall gun, and this is the one that we're talking about, but also there was a Swiss one which had a 140mm gun too. So basically you could have an event vehicle and also a standard tech tree one, and with nations like the Soviets getting the Object 292, I don't really see why the Germans shouldn't also get a larger gunned Leopard. So this vehicle is straight up just taking out the 120mm and adding in the 140mm. This gave it additional punching power, which obviously was really nice, and also because of the shells being so heavy, they had to also install an autoloader, which meant that the crew was reduced to 3. And also, it could only carry 32 shells instead of 42, which the standard Leopard 2 could carry. Now, everything else basically was exactly the same. It was just a way of testing the gun to see if it would work. And it did. It worked very well. But because of the fall of the USSR, because of Germany not seeing a need to improve the gun to a 140, even though it gave it better ballistics, the project was cancelled in 1995. But a prototype was built, it was tested, and shown to work. So why not? And then we have the Stug 4. I've talked about this a million times, so I'm not going to go through it too much once again, but you know what the Stug 4 is. It's basically the Stug 3, but instead built off the Panzer IV chassis, instead of the Panzer III chassis. There was a lot of them built during the Second World War. It was very prolific. The SPGs for Germany were actually some of the most efficient vehicles that Germany built, and for some reason it still hasn't made it to the game. It's one of those which was in the first kind of planned release list for Germany, and then just never made it. So I think now it is finally time to add it to the game, especially since another vehicle, the Elephant, which was one of those which also was on that very, very old planned list, finally came to the game as a Battle Pass vehicle. It is now time for the Stug 4 with the 75mm Stug 40 L48. We also have the fat-bottomed Panzer, the Panzerkampfwagen 4 mit hydrostatischem Antrieb. Basically what this is a Panzer IV with a different drive system, a hydrostatic drive, also known as the Toma drive. And this was just something that was trialed, which was kind of interesting. It was based on a Panzer IV G chassis, and I was very surprised that this vehicle has never made it into the game. The Tank Encyclopedia website actually has a very good kind of breakdown of what they changed on it and why they changed on it. So this is what they say. The Toma system operated in a similar way to the petrol-electric drive system produced by Porsche for its Tiger I concept vehicle that would later become the Ferdinand and the Elephant. The system was a lot safer, however, as it was a petrol hydraulic system, and this gave the benefits of the Porsche system without the fire risk that plagued it so badly. The Panzer IV chassis underwent heavy modifications to be able to mount this new drive system. The engine compartment of the tank was almost completely removed and rebuilt. The drive was placed in the rear of the tank under a large sloping engine deck, and 2 oil pumps were installed behind and connected directly to the normal Maybach HL120 TRM engine. These powered 2 hydraulic motors. A swash plate drive sent the power through a reduction gear into the newly added rear drive wheels, which replaced the traditional idler wheel. Unfortunately, only one prototype of this vehicle was built, and by the time this happened, the Allies were also knocking on Germany's door. In April 1945, the US 3rd Infantry Division was advancing through southern Germany and into Bavaria. They broke into Augsburg on the 27th and had the whole city secured on the 28th. With the city, they captured the Zahnradfabrik plant and the test vehicle. So it never really went anywhere in a huge way. Now let's talk about some vehicles that never existed but would be nice to see, mainly because of the fact that we have a bunch of vehicles now in the game that were never finished, so why not just add some more, especially since Germany has some pretty interesting designs. The first one is the Entwicklung 75. Now, if you don't know what the E75 is, it's basically a development project from Germany. The whole E-series was one of those which was completely designed around making a standard set of tank designs. So things that were easier to produce than what was actually there. One of the problems that Germany had was the fact that depending on what you were building, you had to change the design quite a lot. If instead you manufactured a lot of the same parts and then you were able to put them together with similar attributes, that meant that it was easier for production. Very similar to stuff like the T-34, why it became so apparent, and also stuff like the Sherman, the B-17, and many others. These vehicles became very good because of the fact that you could churn them out very quickly, and also they were pretty good at their jobs too. So the E50, specifically the standard Panzer as it was known, is kind of the core of this series. You have the E25, which is very similar to the Hetzer, the E75, which is the heavier one, similar to the Tiger II and the Jagdtiger, and then of course the E100 that we already have in the game. The E50 was the vehicle which was designed to replace the Panther and the Tiger I, and a lot of the series was kind of based around. Now, as I said, this thing was never really built. The turret itself was never even fully conceptualized in what it would be, but the hull was, so at least we have that kind of going for it. The weight of this thing would have been around 50 to 75 tons. The engine was supposed to be the Maybach 900 horsepower, and of course it would have some pretty decent armor on it. But the main thing is it would increase or keep some of the mobility of the Panther series and have that nice electrical drive, which would have been quite good too. Now, I'll probably do some future videos talking about the E-series because it is kind of fascinating to see all the different designs that they had going for them. But for me, if we're talking about which one should be added, well, at this point, with all of the fake naval vehicles, with all of the fake tanks and the planes that are in, why not add these in to have a bit of fun with? Now, the last vehicle is the German Lion, the Panzer Löwe. Now, this vehicle is incredibly confusing when it comes to what it should be. A lot of people look at Wikipedia and just see the 2 separate variants and go, oh, well, it's probably one of those. But if you actually look into the history of the Löwe, it turns out that it never really had kind of a stable position of what the vehicle should be. It started off in 1939, where there was the idea of the VK6501. This vehicle was supposed to be a super heavy tank that would be used as an assault tank, very similar to the T-95 and other friends. But the Germans had already kind of, by the summer of 1940, rolled through, Czechoslovakia, France, Belgium, fortifications, all of these things, and they didn't need an assault tank which was super heavy, and actually realized that you shouldn't have a vehicle over 30 tons because the bridges around the place just wouldn't be able to hold them. So there was not really much point in it. So by August of 1940, this idea got buried. But what ended up happening later on in the war, in 1941 and 1942, of course, you have Operation Barbarossa, which was the invasion of the Soviet Union by the Germans. And what they found was the Soviets had heavier tanks. And there was also spy reports to Germany, which showed to them that the Soviets were working on super heavy tanks. And after running into stuff like the KV-1 and KV-2 and already having issues with them, they were super worried about these really heavy tanks that were coming out of the Ural and places like that. So they started once again to work on heavier tanks to deal with these vehicles. So plans for vehicles like the Löwe started popping up again, but once again, they just kept getting changed over and over and over again. It was supposed to be 80 tons, and then it was supposed to be 90 tons. It was supposed to have a 149mm gun, or a 105mm gun, which turned up as well, or even other guns, such as a 128mm gun, and also varying calibers of the different guns. These weapon systems all changed over the period of 2 years, where they were trying to work what they wanted to add to this vehicle. When it came to the armor, it kept getting lighter, it kept getting heavier, because of the fact that they were trying to stay within the weight limit. The only thing that didn't really change on this vehicle was its engine, funnily enough, which was the Daimler-Benz MB507, which was used on the LS torpedo boats. They decided this was going to use it. The power of it was slightly reduced, and it was going to have 800 horsepower and at basically 2200 RPM. But then you could also get it at 1,000 horsepower with 2,400 RPM, which was what it was on the standard LS. So this vehicle went through so many different designs, so many different iterations. There were some of them where it had 5 crew, there are some of them where it had 6 crew, that there isn't really a way of nailing down what this vehicle was. Even the final plans for this vehicle, the final designs for this vehicle, we don't actually have. And there's a lot of speculation that this eventually morphed into, of course, the Mouse project, with stuff like one of the last turret designs by Krupp in 1942 being with the 15cm KWK L40. But the problem with even larger guns, if they decided to fit it, is the turret just wouldn't have even fit the ammo. It wouldn't have even gone through, and you wouldn't have been able to load it because the rounds themselves were 40 to 50 kilos each. So good luck kind of like picking those things up. So the problem with the Löwe is it's very hard to nail down what it actually is. Is it a vehicle which is 90 tons with 120mm of armor on the front with a 105mm gun? Or is it a vehicle which had 100mm of armor on the side of it and weighed 76 tons and had the larger gun, the 149mm? And that's where it becomes interesting, because it means that you could pick a version to put as an event vehicle, and then you could pick a version to put in the tech tree, and basically make everybody kind of happy, apart from the people who don't like ahistorical vehicles. And as a person who generally doesn't like ahistorical vehicles, but also understands that in War Thunder now we have many precedents for these types of vehicles, and also there are people who would enjoy these vehicles, I think it's time to finally crack the seal on these things. As always, though, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tullio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.